Yeah, what does breathwork mean? Because some people listening may not. Does that just mean you breathe a lot? Or
it's a conscious connected breath. Okay, so it's a conscious connected breath to music with guidance, which basically enables you to have either a physical or emotional or mental release, spiritual release.
Intuitive Leadership Mastery, the podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders like you who want to double profits and half stress by improving your business intuition. Learn how with your host, Michaela Light.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Natalie Thompson from the United Kingdom in the northern bit, Rochdale. And she has a beautiful accent. You're going to hear it in a minute. We're going to be talking about how she brings spiritual work, in her case, breathwork and cacao, into the corporate world. And she has a whole business around recruiting that she built. But then she got this message inside that she should bring in the spiritual side as well as the corporate side. And we'll talk about why she did that and what's about there in the episode. If you don't know Natalie, she spent a long time in the corporate world. She's the founder of Pangea Global Associates, which is an executive search company worldwide, finds senior talent for software and tech vendors across the world, which is probably how I found you, Natalie, searching on LinkedIn for amazing people. I think you actually commented on, you either wrote your own post that I thought was good, or you commented on someone else's, I forget which. But we were obviously destined to meet and talk about this stuff. And she's also co-founder of Breathe, Pray, Love, which provides mental health through breathwork and plant medicines. And her goal for this year is to raise the planet's vibration through breathwork and ceremonial cacao. Welcome, Natalie.
That is it. Thank you. Yes. Quite the intro, Michaela.
Yeah, well, you wrote it. Of course,
yeah, that's true. That's true. Bloody good, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a very interesting mix you have. You've got the corporate thing. You do executive search, software vendors, but you also want to raise the vibration of the planet, and you don't keep those two separate because, a lot of people listening, they have a spiritual side, but maybe they keep it separate and they're a bit afraid to bring it to work. So I'm kind of curious, how did you get into all this spiritual woo-woo stuff?
Oh, the woo-woo. I mean, it's tricky, it takes some strength and resilience and kind of inner knowing that you're doing the right thing to really push forward with it in both sides of your life. Because for me, I think, the Pangea side of the business, it's been my baby for 13 years and I grew it from nothing. And when the more spiritual aspect of me started to come out, sort of 4 or 5 years ago, I did not know at that point that it was going to lead here. So it was obviously very separate. But then I think with, what happened with COVID and people having more time and things changing, and then me discovering the breathwork and the cacao and spending more time doing both in lockdown and healing so much of my stuff, it was like, right, I have a way of bringing this to the corporate world. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but I feel like that is what I'm here to do. So it's been interesting because there's been a real...
I'm going to interrupt you there. How did you know? Did an angel tap you on the shoulder, or did you get a dream, or did you? I'm always curious how people get their intuition because everyone gets it different ways.
It was like the thing with the breath work. So I'd done, my sister introduced me to breath work. My sister lives in the Isle of Man, and she introduced me to a lady called Rosemary O'Donoghue, who I'm actually doing the corporate online breathwork course with now. We put a course together. But she introduced me to Rosemary and said, try a breath work. I think it'll be really good for you, because I'd always suffered with a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. What does breath work mean? Because some people listening may not. Does that just mean you breathe a lot? Or?
It's a conscious connected breath. Okay. So it's a conscious connected breath to music with guidance, which basically enables you to have either a physical or emotional or mental release, spiritual release. It sounds like a lot of people say it's meditation. I do breath work. I do meditation. They don't do breath work. Like breath work is, it's quite hard work. It's like either sort of 15, 20, 40 minutes of conscious connected breathing, which enables you to tap into just that kind of, that intelligence, that innate intelligence that's already in your body and the higher self. And if you allow yourself to go into it, you will release trauma. So we all have trauma. We have big trauma. We have little trauma. Big trauma is obviously, you know, the huge events that have massively impacted your life. But then there's also the smaller traumas, you know, being told to eat your greens, being told, you know, that you're not worth, you know, that you can't wear those shoes, or whatever it is in that moment that stops you from being your authentic self. And you suppress that and you push it down. It's held in the body and it becomes a trauma in the body. So by some miraculous way, the breath work enables you to tap into releasing the trauma from the body. So you either have a release physically, it's like shaking, convulsing, sounds terrifying, it's amazing, you feel totally free. Or you have an emotional release where you literally you can just feel it coming up and you cry, you wail. I experienced a lot of that. I was never a crier, I was a big suppressor. So breath work for me was a game changer, but it took a while. So just coming back to your question, you know, it took me 5 goes of breath work before I had any release at all, but I still felt really called to it. I still felt like there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something in this that is really pulling me towards it. And I feel like I really need to explore it. So during COVID, because obviously no one was recruiting, and I was.
Why not? Seems like the perfect time to find great people.
Yeah, well, nobody was hiring at all.
No, I know. They were
not in my
frightened.
industry. Yeah, not in my industry anyway. But you know, there was it was just a brilliant time for me to just stop. And I was quite lucky. I'd had a good year before, so I just took some time out and did a course and did all this breathwork myself. And honestly, just was. I was like, wow, I can't believe what this has done. It was just constantly releasing and releasing and releasing, just years and years of stuff, even maybe past life stuff, who knows. And so it was from that I was like, do you know what? I feel like with this big shift that's going on in the planet and people being called more into their purpose rather than following, you know, the line of just get a job and just make decent money, you know, I was just starting to feel like this is my calling, because, you know, having suffered some, you know, anxiety and panic and stuff myself, I knew that this was a way of ensuring that people could heal from that. So that was the pull.
What do you mean panic? Can you dig into that a bit?
So when I was 19...
What would that look like? Yeah, when you were 19, you had a panic attack? Or... When
the panic attacks, you wouldn't have known that I was having a panic attack. Some people like...
They were secret panic attacks.
They were secret. So it was more a feeling of complete overwhelm. I know now what it was. I know it was the nervous system kicking in, the survival mode kicking in. But at the time, I just thought I was going mad. So the adrenaline would be there. I'd want to run.
Well, I didn't want to say anything, Natalie, but both you and I are a bit mad by society's current conventions, you know.
Absolutely.
So maybe it was your true, maybe it was your true self who wanted to come out from this constrained corporate, you know, living.
Yes, I imagine there was an element of suppression there, you know, and maybe not feeling safe to be my full self. But either way, when they started showing up the panic attacks, they got to a point where they were like 4 or 5 times a day. I didn't know what they were.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, I didn't know what they were. And I was also scared to tell anyone in case they locked me up, because I thought, this is, you know, if I tell anyone, they might say there's something really badly wrong with me. So
you didn't think of just cutting back on the 10 cups of coffee you were drinking a day? Or...
I didn't really drink coffee, to be honest.
Didn't?
So
Really?
I couldn't even blame it on that. But this is the thing, once you're in survival mode, it doesn't take anything. You know, your body. Well, I'd been jumped in a nightclub. Some girls
oh my God.
beat me up in a nightclub. Well, it was, anyway.
It's a bit mean of them, isn't it?
I went into the toilets while these girls were beating up another girl, and I stepped in and said, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And the next thing, they were on top of me. But because it was very quiet, nobody came in, so it went on for quite a while. I thought I was going to die. And to be honest with you, the panic didn't start straight away. It started about 3 months later. But what I found out is that 3 months after a traumatic event is the time really when something like PTSD kicks in if you don't actually.
I was going to say, was it post-traumatic stress disorder? Because I just want to say for people listening, a lot of people we think of PTSD as something that soldiers get, right? You know, you're in a battle and your mate's blown into 17 pieces next to you, and there's a bit of, well, let's not go into the details, otherwise we might get more PTSD, but really, you can get it. Actually, you can get it in a nightclub. You can get it from a relationship that went bad. You can get it from, parents beating you. You can get it from school teachers being mean, and you can get it in the corporate world from either side. Either if you're the boss or if you're the employee, that everyone gets little traumas.
Typically, what it is with PTSD is it's when the window of tolerance becomes unmanageable. So for me, it wasn't just that event. It was other events that were happening at the time. It was unresolved stuff as well. So PTSD typically, I mean, obviously, if you're in a soldier and you're in war, then it's probably more that. But for other people like you or I, you know, if it can be just if there's too much happens within a period of time and it isn't resolved, it isn't released, it isn't processed, that's when it turns to PTSD.
Does this mean that if we're living in a somewhat stressful situation, for an example, we're living in a world where the inflation's high and there's a war going on in Europe, and I won't list all the other wacky-dacky stuff that's going on, and a lot of people are stressed out, right? They don't. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this. I've noticed in my sales calls and other things, people take forever to get back to me. And it's not because they're not interested. It's just they're stressed out. They can't deal with any more stuff. They've been told by the news to be upset about, thing A and then thing B and then thing C. And now we're on like letter L or whatever. And how many months are we in the year? It's September, 9 months. And usually there's like maybe in a year, there's one thing that you're supposed to get really wound up about, right? But this year it's been endless, it's relentless.
They're ramping it up. They're ramping it up for sure.
It's ramped up. And so what I'm saying is, and throw on top of that, the economy is a bit wobbly right now. And a lot of people are stressed at work as well.
And the energy stuff that's coming in now, they're going with the energy and...
Well, there's an energy shift. There's a whole spiritual awakening.
No, sorry. So I don't mean. I mean actual energy prices. So
that kind of energy. I thought you were talking about ghosts and angels.
No, we're coming on. That's too early for that. We're going on to that in a minute.
You're listening to the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast. Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. And now, back to today's show.
How much do you have to pay for angels in the United Kingdom now? Is it up to £2 a litre of angel?
Actually. Free to me.
Yes. So, there's the energy crisis that some people say anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's not frighten the people listening too much. But my point is, people are very stressed right now. And I find, I'm curious if you find this, people are slower to respond, even if they're interested in stuff. And they kind of need a bit more hand-holding and emotional space and patience. And it's okay if you hadn't got back to me. I'm still going to be loving and whatever. I've got my boundaries too, but, I can create a container in my business where I support my prospects and my customers through their stresses, and I provide an island of calm. And I don't know if you do that or not, but
I just think that people are completely overwhelmed by how much they have going on. Like your inbox is constant. Like what I have to do now, even if something is really interesting to me and I get something through, if it's not work related, I just end up having to delete it, because otherwise I know that I'm going to be thinking, I need to do that. And then I've got to do my Instagram and I've got to do my Facebook and I need to be posting content. And then, and it's just, there's just this constant feeling of doing. It's that masculine energy driving everything. And I think people just become very overwhelmed and have to kind of say, you know what, I can't even look at that at the minute.
But it's like breathing. You can't spend your whole life just breathing in and inhaling without exhaling. And we can't spend the whole time doing without taking time for rest and recovery, or doing breath work or cacao or plant medicines, whatever you do to release the micro traumas that happen. And I did want to say one other thing related to your business, which is a lot of entrepreneurs and bosses I know have what I call trauma around hiring. They hired someone, they didn't work out, and now they're a little they're a little reluctant to hire someone else because they're afraid it'll be another F up, and I see that as a scar they have around hiring. I don't know if do you come across that at all?
No, I don't. I've not seen anybody say, oh God, we've just lost someone, so now we're not going to replace them. I don't see that.
They don't say it. People don't say it. We don't live in a world where people are upfront about, I've got this trauma. Here, let me open my kimono. Look at all these traumas I have. No, they just behave different.
Yeah, possibly. I think people can get quite disheartened. I've got a few CEOs that I work with who you can tell are a bit disheartened and they feel a bit like, especially with hiring in the US. I get quite a few people saying, God, people in the US, they just talk the talk, and actually, especially when it comes to like enterprise salespeople and stuff, they typically say, these guys, they talk the talk, but actually, can they really do it? They kind of always embellish like how good they are and how much of the deal they actually did. Like, I've just done this massive deal, and actually they just went and got the paper off the order off the fax machine, So, but that's for the hiring managers to drill down. And I do think as well, hiring managers, and leaders need to take some responsibility for making the decisions and using their intuition. But also selling the opportunity to the candidate, because gone are the days where you can say, right then, why do you want to join us? It's got to be more about, you selling the opportunity, because a lot of these people, they might have 4 or 5 offers. They're probably not looking for a role. When I approach them, they're not usually looking for a role,
Right. The good ones aren't. The A players often already have a good job.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so unless there's a company-wide layoff and the A players get kicked out with the B players and any C players that happen to have snuck into the company, then they're not on the job market. And the other thing I was saying, I have another podcast around programming, which is kind of, somewhat related. And I was interviewing someone, he wanted to find a job because his company pivoted and the whole team got laid off. And I said to him, maybe 80% of jobs don't even get advertised. It's all through the network and people like you who are matchmaking. I would call, to me, you're more of a matchmaker. You're finding the perfect match for this person, then helping them get through that initial ice-breaking period where they're all a little nervous before they get married,
Yeah.
So
it's being able to actually identify, this is what these guys are looking for. Who has those skills, who has that culture fit, and who's actually willing to even look at it. That's the hard bit. That's what's time consuming about it. Yeah. And you're right, they're not on job boards, they're not looking at people's jobs. No. And they're also getting approached by about 25 other companies at the same time. So,
and they're jaded, maybe.
Totally. And I have to stand out. I have to stand out and I have to have a specific approach, which typically works, which is about being authentic more than anything.
That's very whatever the word is, I can't think of the word, but unusual in this year. Radical. It's radical in this year in the corporate world to be authentic. There's so much lying and spin and political maneuvers.
I can't be any other way. Like, it would make me feel physically sick to be anything other than completely honest and true in what I do.
Right.
And I've been that way all the way through certainly when I've had my own business. It just feels like, morally. I'm a great believer in the universe is working in people's favor. And for me, if I find somebody for a role and they're right and they accept it, then great. But if they don't feel it's right, I'm not going to try and manipulate them or push it or tell lies so that they take the job. That's just not
Because it would be short-term dollars or pounds in your pocket, but it would be long-term regret and
you on the
not feeling good about yourself. Right. And probably, they wouldn't work out. I find the same thing when we do custom software development. And if the customer doesn't feel like a good fit between the two of us or the projects, we can't do the best work on the project. Why say yes? It's just a disaster zone, So I
think you've got to just trust that life is happening for you, and the less you get in the way, the more it can do its job. That's
kind of the flow view of life, the divine feminine view that and I think it also relates if you don't work with this candidate or this job, another better one, and you say clearly to the universe, no, that's not a fit, and it's not, then the universe will provide something even better. And I've seen that happen so many times that I say no to something that feels off, or they clearly are off in 3-dimensional world, in some way. And then something better turns up. So
totally agree. I'm all for just trying to go with the flow. And what I do notice is if you have a patch where it's a bit quiet or things have, I've had things recently where people have been due to start on a day and they've come and said, it's all signed, I've nearly spent the money. and then they say, oh, by the way, I'm not starting today because Amazon have just offered me 30K more than you guys have offered. So I won't be starting. So, in that moment, you're like, oh my God, that was like a 6 month, surge. I've got to start again. But for me, it's like, you know what? Just trust it. It wasn't meant to be. Don't block the process with your own fear and it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be that. It's just like, just let it crack on, really.
I've seen that on the other side. When I was starting out as a manager 30-something years ago, when someone quit the company, I'd try and hold on to them and I'd be, in this scarcity mindset, and I'd try and convince them to say it. Now, like, if someone wants to quit, it's like, yeah, great. How can I help you out? Can I, can I make your transition easy? No, you don't have to leave immediately, have a chance to have a transition. Sometimes what we do is have my company's all 100% virtual now, but when it used to be an office, we sometimes do a circle where everyone got to share, oh, I like this about you, and, or I didn't like that about you, or whatever, but to get it off their chest so the person can leave cleanly and there's no like residual traumarettes lurking around. And we often have, when someone joins a company or a project's started, we sort of celebrate, right, in a company. We welcome into the office and whatever. But when someone leaves, they often slink out the back door. And why not make it a more spiritual leaving process, And
that's like the systemic constellation stuff, isn't it? Which is
with the energetically, where you do energetic shifting. You can do that too.
It's to do with, like, when you leave a company, if it's under a cloud or there's not you don't have closure, you do carry that through energetically. And
that's not good.
I've had that.
Just to be selfish for the entrepreneurs listening, okay, you might say, well, why the fuck do I care about the person who quits, right? Well, first of all, it would be good as another human being that you do care. But even if you don't, for your own company's energetic integrity and all the employees who are left, it's better that they get closure. And that the energy wound, because when someone leaves, there potentially could be an energy wound in the aura of the company. And I'll delve into that in a moment. But it's helpful to have some ceremonies and closure around people leaving, and try and leave on the best terms you can. Don't burn bridges, even if they're a dickwat. That's a technical term.
I love that. I'm going to use it. I think as well, when there is when there's been a problem role as well, and this happened with a role that I worked on in the US, and there was a role where somebody had been a bit of a problem in that role. Okay.
Prat, I think, is the right word.
Prat, okay. So somebody had been a prat, and the role was problematic, and it was causing a big problem for everyone. And so we managed to get rid of this person, when I say get rid, whatever. And this person moved on, and then the next person that came in was instantly feeling a lot of pressure, because actually a lot of the issue was with the team.
Right.
A lot of the issue was with the team and not having the full support. So this new person comes in and goes, oh my God, what have I walked into? Like, everyone's so disillusioned. Everyone's
right.
motivated, and I'm supposed to come in now and fix all this. And
Right.
And again, it's that kind of there's an issue with the system.
Right.
Well,
is it, let me give you an analogy to the audience and you, which is if you were renting rooms in your house to tenants and maybe the room had noises in it or ghosts or a bad smell, and so the tenant left, or maybe the tenant was a dickwad or a prat and they left. Wouldn't you want to clean the room and sage it and really clean up the space and make it beautiful for the next tenant, and then do law of attraction to attract in your ideal tenant, and maybe do a little introspection on how did I allow this dickwad into the room in the first place, or how did I attract, or what in myself is a bit dickwaddy that kind of, because I feel in order for me to attract an idiot or a dickwad or a prat into my business or my life, there has to be an energy hole in my auric field. There has to be some place in my trauma, going back to the traumas, I have some micro trauma or scar that let that kind of person come in. Because if I was whole and filled with love and light, I might bump across this person and be like, oh, it's another one of those dickwads, don't need to work with them.
It's unfinished business, isn't it? The unfinished business keeps these people coming in.
It's a blind spot, right? And if I do the inner work, and I think entrepreneurship is all around, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you've got to do the inner work and heal yourself. Yeah. And then the outer world of your company will grow and blossom. You can't just push through it and work and struggle and hustle like the divine masculine, not divine masculine, but like the
wounded masculine.
The what masculine?
Wounded.
The wounded. I love that. The wounded masculine. Yes. No, there's that whatever in entrepreneurship in the United States. I don't know if it is in England too, but you're supposed to work hard and hustle and just suck it up. And it's a bunch of bullshit. Maybe it worked in the 90s or the 80s or whatever, but it don't work in the 2020s.
No, you have to create space to allow stuff to come in. And I think that this pushing, this is what's out of balance, this kind of masculine, feminine energy. And when I say that, we've all got masculine, I've got masculine and feminine energy. And for quite a long time, I was very much in my masculine. But what's happening now with this kind of, global awakening that's happening is that people are stepping more into their feminine because they have to, because the imbalance has created a lot of the problems on the earth right now. So, the wounded masculine, there's a wounded feminine, there's a wounded masculine, but the feminine is coming up, the divine feminine is coming up to really kind of break some of these systems as well. And one of the things that I discovered is, like, if I take breaks, I have a nap. I have a nap in the day. If I want a nap, I'll go and have a nap, or yes. And, and some days, if I'm really not feeling it, if I'm not in a flow, I'll just say, do you know what? I'm going to go to the gym and I might do something later, or I might just have a day off. Like, I allow myself to go with the flow. Whereas before I'd have pushed through and I'd just keep hitting a brick wall because I'm not in flow. Whereas sometimes you're better off coming away and allowing yourself a little bit of freedom, a little bit of time. And then when you go back to it, it's much easier. That's my view.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I will take, sometimes I'll take a longer nap, but often I'll just lie down in the bed and twitch and shake and let the energy move through. And then I'm refreshed. I often think I'm getting spiritual downloads at that time. It's like I'm doing the masculine do thing. And then I just lie down and let it flow through me. And then I feel much more centered. And the other thing related to this, there's a thing I learned this year about smiling. Initially it was smiling at body parts and organs, and kind of that contented Buddha-like smile that, oh, I'm glad you're here, stomach. Thank you for digesting all the things I put in you, and so on, and go through all the organs. But what I realized, you can use this for tasks and projects and all kinds of things. So if I smile at the project, just see it going easily and flowing, it often does just, come easy.
Well, it's like embodiment, isn't it? It's that idea of embodying the feeling of it already being done and already being good.
Yeah. And it's setting intentions. It's all that vision board stuff. I used to do a vision board every year, but I was talking to a friend of mine she does many things, but one of the things she does is she helps people do their vision boards. And she and I realized, well, we don't have to do this once a year. We can do it every day, or, just draw a little visionette board for this project, or, I'm going to hire someone. What's the vision for how that process goes? And it's all whatever it is for you, and what's my ideal person or the company or whichever way around it is. So I think, we're, I don't have this book in front of me, but there's a famous book called Think and Grow Rich by, spacing on the guy's name. I'll put it in the notes. This was written 100 years ago. Yeah. And the point I want to make is what we think is what we manifest. And if we have positive thoughts and we clean up our trauma, we're going to create a wonderful business. And if we don't, we're going to have a dorked up, stressful, loss-making business that causes health problems eventually for our staff and us.
Well, the way I see it is, and this is something that I've only realized in the last probably couple of years, doing the breath work and clearing so much out, is that, we are channels, we're channels. And for me, like, it's a bit like, if you're blocked, how can anything creative or anything good come in when your mind is full of stuff that isn't serving you, but you can't get rid of it because it's just like sludge. So
it's hard.
It's really hard. And then you've got new stuff that you're trying to deal with all this sludge still in. So, by releasing that, through the breath work in particular, on a weekly basis even, you literally are making way so that you can take more of the good stuff in, let more light in, let more manifest more, better abundance, feel lighter. There's plenty of times I'll go down and I'll go and do a breath work, even if I think nothing really on my mind, I'm fine. And I'll come out and I'll completely convulsed and I'll cried for like 20 minutes. Pure release, not attached to a thought. No, I'm not thinking, oh no, there was this time when this happened. It's just a release. And it's
I feel the understanding or the thoughts are secondary. It's the releasing the energy that's the most important. And if you get an insight, I didn't get the sweeties when I went to the shop with my mummy when I was 3 years old, okay, that's great, but it probably doesn't really matter in the course of things. But releasing that energy of lack that you felt then, that is now affecting you when you're coming to do your sales calls or do your hiring, that is important.
I like that because that's the thing, people get attached to a story and quite often they're triggers in the moment and nothing about what's really happening. It's the reminder of the feeling of what happened to that's unresolved from the past. So you just nailed that.
Yeah, and we can feel into that. We can do breath work or plant medicine or whatever modality, yoga, laughter therapy is another good one if you've ever done that. That's very, what's the word? Cathartic is the word I'm looking for. I mean, great orgasms work good too, And when you were talking about your breathwork experience, it really sounded like you're having really amazing sex without having to deal with other people involved,
Well, you can have breathwork orgasms actually, which is like,
well, there you go.
Yeah. So, anyway, moving on.
Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with, we won't go down the sex road, but there's nothing wrong with sexual. I mean, humans are sensual and sexual people, and we're not just robots with a mental thing, right? We bring our whole selves to work. I'm not suggesting you should go off and have sex with someone in the office because that would be inappropriate, but it's okay to use these different tools in a safe space to
absolutely
release stuff, whether it's shaking or TRE is another one. I don't know if you've come across that.
Yes, with the trauma release with the legs.
Yeah, the abdomen, the legs. That's some Australian dude who came up with it. Trauma release exercises.
Gittin Tolstoff, who does the biodynamic breathwork and trauma release. I think he uses that a lot. So you can actually go and lie down and put your legs together in that position and just release without doing any breath work.
Right. You just get into a mild stress position that makes the muscles vibrate. And then the trauma that you'd stuck into your hips or into your core muscles and your abdomen, wherever the body place is, comes out. And to be honest, this is why dancing or exercising, they release stuff because you get to move bits that are stuck. And just look at most offices. People are in chairs, in cubicles. They're kind of stuck in the same position. They're probably not breathing deeply. And it's not socially acceptable to shake and twitch while you're working, right? Which is a shame.
Well, I've been going to ecstatic dance. And last week, I'd not been for a while because my breathwork classes that I do locally are on a Thursday. And I had been doing some ecstatic dance. It's like 2-3 hours on a Thursday in Manchester. And it's basically just total freedom of expression. The amount of people that have said, what you mean you go and dance and you don't have any alcohol? And it's like, this is honestly, once you discover this, you will. It's so freeing. It's the most amazing experience because everybody's in the same boat. We have a cacao first, But I went on Thursday after not being for a while.
What's cacao for people who don't know? Because you make it sound like you snorted some cocaine, but really cacao is what?
Not anymore. So ceremonial cacao is the purest form of chocolate, but it's a plant medicine. And it's basically a natural antidepressant. So it boosts your serotonin, it boosts your dopamine. It's got something in it called theobromine. It's got the bliss molecule. So it basically gives you feelings of contentment, compassion, and it's a heart opener. So it's very good for the heart. It's very good for the cardiovascular system. It's full of magnesium. But what it really does is it connects you to your heart center, which is why it's good for ecstatic dance, because it just enables you to express and open. It's not psychedelic. You're not tripping or anything like that. But I have it every morning instead of a coffee, and it's changed my life because it makes me feel very connected to myself. It's very good for creative insights as well. But just coming back to the ecstatic dance, I walked in there last Thursday. I'd been in my head all week. I was really annoyed with myself. I was like, why am I in my head so much? Which makes it worse, exacerbates the problem.
You probably had your head up your arse or something.
It was a bit up my arse. I'm not going to lie. And then the more I was getting frustrated with myself, the more in my head I was getting. So I was like, I'm going to go to ecstatic dance. And I went in there and immediately I got a bit triggered because there was a few people whooping. I was like, this is just annoying me. But I realized that was because of the space I was in that moment. And what I did was I just thought, no, do you know what? I'm going to relinquish control and I'm just going to shut my eyes. And I went on a journey. And honestly, I cried at the end of that. I cried at the end of that dance because it had just completely taken me out of my head into my heart, and I was completely free of everything that I'd been feeling that week, and it was like magic.
That is magic.
It really was. And I'm not the kind of person to, make anything up that isn't.
So I want to say to people listening, you probably, if you're in any size city, you're going to find ecstatic dance or 5 rhythms or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's usually music that doesn't have too many words. They don't have too many instructions. And, you're not, although you can make whoopee noises, you're encouraged not to talk. So you get out of your head. Some ecstatic dances I've been to, people are blindfolded and you kind of dance on a yoga mat so you don't hit other people. Yeah. And often the music goes through those 5 rhythm stages of probably you can remember what the stages are, the 5 waves.
It kind of builds up and you go through like staccato and then ecstatic and then so it kind of builds up. It takes you on a journey. That's the 5 rhythms.
Right. And a lot of ecstatic dance will go through, they'll start off with something more gentle, then it'll get more frenetic and rhythmic, and then there'll be a feminine flowy bit, and then there'll be a kind of chill down bit at the end. And it does take people often through a journey. And I've led a static dance myself, and I encourage people to set an intention for their dance if they want to, as to what, is there something you want to create in your business or something you want to release or whatever. So same for yoga. I teach yoga too. I usually do that for yoga classes. I invite students, what's an intention you have for something you want to create in your life or let go. And then often while they're doing the poses, they get insights because they're like moving their body and breathing. And it's hard to get insights just in your head,
Well, that's it. Once you come into the heart, that's when you get the true insights because you're not blocking all your own.
you know how in America and probably in the United Kingdom, when people say point to yourself, people point to their head. That's where they experience themselves. But in Japan, when you ask someone to point to themselves, they point to their heart. Because in that society, that's where people think that that's the embodiment of the person. Not saying Japan is a perfect society, it has its own little issues, but it's interesting that not every society thinks that human beings are centered in their head.
This is it. It's like we're very much driven by the mind and the ego, and actually, you know, where your peace is and where your, you know, where you're going to find your joy is in your heart. It's never going to come from your thinking mind, you know.
No, you can't think your way into joy. Typically, you can think your way into being fucking depressed. That's usually books.
That's a really good one for that. Yeah, the mind is brilliant at that. You know, I think for me, like what I've realized is, you know, we're all natural dancers, and some people they get this idea of, oh, I can't dance, and I could never do that.
When you say they get that idea, let's just dig into that. Where did that idea come from?
I think like like as children, stuff happens to us. Someone says something in the moment, and you know what? In that moment, for some reason, it sticks, and it's an imprint. You know, it's an imprint.
Maybe a parent says that. Maybe the parent feels lack of confidence about their own body.
Quite often it's a projection. Or, you know, a little boy, for example, is dancing around and his dad might say, or his mum or his grandma, oh, don't be silly. What are you doing that for? You look silly doing that. So then what happens is the little boy then says, oh, well, I will exile that part of myself because that part is not allowed here. It's not encouraged, and therefore it's unlovable. So I will also deny it in myself. So that aspect becomes denied. Then what happens is they decide that, well, they're not a dancer, and they probably don't like people who do dance.
Right.
You know, because that's the projection then of, I don't like dancing and I don't like you because you dance, you're a guy that dances and I don't like that. And it's about that's something called internal family systems, where you do the work around all these aspects of yourself that you kind of you put in place to keep yourself safe. And you know, your protectors and then the parts that you've actually completely denied. And the internal family system stuff is all about bringing those aspects back to wholeness.
Now, people listening may think, well, I don't really need to dance for my business, no matter how happy Natalie looks. And how many you do. You know, every morning. I was playing devil's advocate there, dear.
No, I know, but you do. I'm sorry, I won't hear anything about it apart from you do need to dance in the morning. Now, I never thought I'd do this. I was a 7 times a snooze hitter in the morning, right?
Oh.
You know, like 5, what's the latest I can get up and get away with it? Hit the snooze. Do you know now what I do? I get up at like 6:30, 6:45. I go and have a cacao and I dance for an hour and a half.
Fucking hell.
I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm just being like eyes closed and just totally in a flow. I just allow the movement to come through me and it's non-negotiable. That is
what difference do you notice in your work day when you do that versus you don't?
Just it's almost like it's just become such a part of my routine. It makes me happy. It makes me happy. It makes me more able to deal with all the crap that comes in the other parts of your life, you know, and it brings joy. It's not like, oh God, I better go and dance in the morning. It's like, oh God, I'll get up. I look forward to it. I'm not saying everybody needs to go and do that, but for me, it's just become something that's evolved over time, and I just I love it. I get so much from it.
I think it's important we do things we enjoy, both outside of work and inside work. You know, we in businesses we so often look at the profit and loss and the money, and I have a dream that one day, as well as looking at the money, we look at the joy that's flowing in our business. How happy are the staff? How happy are the clients? How happy am I as the owner of the business? Because that's important too.
Well, the thing is, typically where your joy is where the good stuff happens. If you're following joy, I think that's where the good stuff happens. Or if you are experiencing joy outside of work, you will bring it into work. But if you're just trying to get an end goal of, you know, getting deals in, but you've got no time for your family, or you've got no time to do anything that you like, then that's kind of defeating the object as far as I'm concerned. It's like,
and that's where people get burned out. You know, that's where people get sick, they have a health crisis, they get cancer, they have a heart attack at 50 or whatever age, and or they get divorced, and they don't see their kids anymore. And it's like they have a midlife crisis because they didn't have that holistic approach. They were just focused on the work or the money or fame or success, whatever it is. And it's not sustainable. You can focus on money for a little bit, right? But it helps to switch to focus on other things too. And ideally, you do work that you enjoy doing. I'm sure you see this with candidates. You want the candidate to enjoy the skill they have and to want to learn it more and contribute to the company, and they enjoy the position, right? They're not just doing it because they're going to make megabucks. Not that there's anything wrong with making megabucks, but.
No, I mean, we all like to make megabucks as well.
Yes.
But, I think what I've seen over the last 6 months or so, or maybe a bit longer, is, this candidate-led market now. People are literally just refusing to even look at jobs unless they meet a certain criteria. And that is, I'm not going into the office. Like, I don't care how much you pay me. I'm not going to the office, or I'm not going to the office unless it's just like once or twice a week, or, I want to be able to work from Spain 6 months of the year. Like, that's how demanding.
Why not?
Become. But yeah, exactly. Why not? I mean, one thing that, the pandemic showed is that people can be trusted. People can be trusted to not be micromanaged and to work from home and, to get on with it. They don't need to be in an office where, you can.
Well, I would temper that slightly with, there needs to be clear what results they need to generate in the role. Yeah. Because clearly there are some people, it's not that they can't be trusted, it's just they don't necessarily get the results done. If their boss isn't clear, this is what you have to produce each week, they don't necessarily produce it, because they're not used to it.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, you can very easily prove if someone's doing their job or not.
Sure.
It's like the results are there. Are you hitting your target? Yes. If you're hitting your target, I don't really care what you're doing.
No, it doesn't matter. Does it matter what hours you work unless you have to be talking to someone in a meeting? Or does it matter, what clothing you wear or where you do it? Or, does it matter what gender you are or what age you are or what race you are or what religion or any of those things? No, it's just do you fit the culture of the company? Do you have the attitude that fits the company? Do you have the skills? And do you want to do, you're going to enjoy doing this and whatever the job is, and bond with the team, that to me is what's important, not all the other little things.
No, totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, I understand some jobs are more hands-on, if you're a nurse in a hospital, you probably need to actually touch the beds and the patients and take the temperature.
That's not so good remote. It's not so good remote.
Yeah, not so good remote, but or many of the other important jobs, repairing the water mains or taking out the trash or whatever, all those jobs when we talk about this lockdown period, there were a lot of people who still had to go to work, There were kind of two kinds of people in Britain and in the United States, the ones who could work from home in their pajamas and what have you, and the ones who unfortunately or fortunately, couldn't because their role wouldn't let them.
And actually, a lot of those on either camp were desperate to do the opposite.
Oh, yes, because you get bored at home and you're feeling
quite constrained. And
you may not enjoy going out if you're afraid of the whole situation. So anyway, hopefully we've got some benefit.
Moved on. We've moved on with that now. For now.
Yes, we've moved on from that particular excitement. I think it's a little whatever. I do feel with these fear things in the news that, it's like a meme. There's a whole meme economy thing. A meme is a belief or an idea that gets shared around between brains, whatever the idea is. And they get worn out. If the news is pounding on 24/7 about one particular thing, after a certain while, people get bored of it and they just move on.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we've got so many of those this year, because people are getting a bit jaded and a bit, the trust in the news is down, and the trust in corporations is not that great either, to be honest. Some corporations are, but a lot of them, if they're not providing those extra things you're saying, where there's meaning to the work and they care about their staff, people pick up on that and they won't put up with it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, a ping pong table, or that's not going down too well anymore.
No,
free
you might stick that ping pong table where the sun don't shine. Yeah. Yes. And this also relates to that. I forget what it was called, but there's a current thing called quiet quitting you've probably read about. And then there's the Great Resignation was the other thing. And they're all aspects of the same thing, right? That people won't put up with jobs that are, I'm just going to say it bluntly, if that's okay with you, Natalie. If the job is sucking their soul, people won't put up with it anymore. And that's what a lot of corporate jobs used to do.
But I think that the time that 2 years or however long it was really gave people food for thought, as far as, hang on a minute.
Right.
What am I doing? Like, what am I here on earth to do? Does this make me happy? I've just lost 2 years of my life. Like, people it's been amazing at people reevaluating, like, what do I want? Like, what even is this? So I think it's been brilliant on so many levels, for really shaking things up that needed to be shaken up. I don't see it as a bad thing at all. I think it's been amazing that it was needed. It was needed. I mean, the weather here in the UK was absolutely amazing when there was nothing in the sky. So.
No, I'd agree. There was a lot of silver lining to what occurred, and it gave people that shift, and they did see some truth. And the problem with the rat race, as the modern corporate life tends to be, is you're kept so busy at work, and then you're busy off, entertaining yourself or getting drunk or sniffing white powder substances or whatever it is. You don't have any time. Whereas in that period, people had time and they could see, oh, this I like, that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson to draw for that, is take time in your life, in your business. Don't be all go, go, go. And I do want to get this Frank Sinatra song in that's very illuminating on this, which you may have heard occasionally. And the song goes, doobie doobie doo.
Oh,
and
not so sure about that one.
Oh, well, I'll find the song. He's a 1950s singer.
No, I know him. I know Sinatra. Yeah. I just wasn't sure what that was.
Well, he has a song where he's singing that. He's singing those words. And the point I want to make is it's good to do things in business, but it's also good just to be and be still, dance or be in your heart or your body, take some cacao, do some breath work so that you have the perspective. There's this, you've probably come across Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, whether you've read it or not. And I always remember one thing. He had a chapter on goal setting and, managing and what have you. And he made the point that, like, you can have the best fucking managers in the world. Maybe your goal is to build a road through the jungle, right? And the managers are there, like, measuring how sharp the knives are and how effective the workers are at the front line, cutting through those jungle vines. And then finally, someone takes a little break and they climb up one of these tall trees and have a look around and say, "Oh, wrong jungle." And it's so easy in business to be so busy that you forget, okay, is this something I enjoy doing? Is this bringing meaning into the world? Is this helping us grow our business? We're even following the goals we set at the beginning of the year, right? And some of those, I don't know if I'm a fan of Traction by Gino Wickman. I don't know if you've come across that entrepreneur book, but he has a whole entrepreneur operating system where you set goals and you kind of have regular meetings to see how you're doing on the goals. And it's just one mental way to keep track of things. But my point is, if we don't look at the big picture occasionally, it's easy to go in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And these practices you bring to the corporate world, I feel, help people reset their corporate whatever. And they can see, are we working good together? Are we going in the direction we want to go?
Yeah.
And it's as important as doing the work. Because otherwise the work can become meaningless and it can become work that isn't effective or isn't going in the right direction. And the direction can fucking change too, particularly these chaotic days. Sometimes you have to pivot a company. And if you're not paying attention, you don't notice that until it's too late.
Well, it's very much about staying clear on who you are, and what you want, and, you know, keeping that connection to yourself. And, you know, again, it's about being embodied. It's about coming into the body, you know, and leaving the thought behind for a little while so that you can get clarity and you can focus.
Right. I'm going to add the S word in here, which is sleep. I know that's a little naughty to say to people in the entrepreneurial life.
Love sleep.
But yeah, me too. And it helps me refresh, and I'll get clearer insights. When I'm well rested, I do my highest value work. You know, that's when I get creative ideas. That's when I have the best interviews with candidates. If I'm tired and dragging, I'm not going to do good work, you know, and the same for my staff. So, you know, all of these things come together to help us do great things. There is one other thing I wanted to get in here. Go ahead. You're the guest.
No, I was just going to talk about the survival mode. So the survival energy, you know, this survival energy that a lot of CEOs, I mean, you know, I've got quite a few CEOs who openly like now talk to me about, you know, the breath work and about cacao and other things. And you know, they're up at the crack of dawn because they're constantly in this survival mode. And the thing about survival mode, and I don't know if you've ever looked at stuff about, you know, the mother wound and things like that. It's like, anybody who's in survival mode is not really able to be nurturing at all. They're just functioning to survive. And therefore you're not actually in a place where you can thrive, I guess. If you're just surviving, you're not usually thriving. And that's why it is important to rebalance and to come into, you know, these practices which enable you to come out of that nuclear survival energy, right? Which is amazing for getting you out of trouble, but it's not so good if you're just shopping at Aldi and it kicks off. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, so this is why it's important, especially for senior leaders who are in this mode, to release that energy. Because that's how they get into trouble. That's how people either get horrendous anxiety and panic, or they get depressed because they actually get to that part where they just can't.
Well, and as a leader, whatever energy I have as a leader gets transmitted to my staff and to my clients. If I come across in survival mode and afraid or anxious or scarcity mentality, it just rubs off on everything. And it kind of reflects back to me. I mean, they say relationship when you're married to someone or dating, it's like a mirror. But I think in business, all the people I work with, whether they're clients or staff or vendors, they're all mirrors to me. And if I'm shining out survival mode, scarcity, fear, anger, energy, it comes back. It may come back a bit twisted and distorted, but it will come back. And so do I really want that energy coming back to me as a leader? Probably not.
And it's that short fuse as well, you know, not being able to, you know, things not going well and then reacting to things quicker and probably not in the best way. But
how many things in business do we have to react in half a second to? It's not like you're on a battlefield where you have to duck because someone's about to shoot you, right? Usually you've got at least a few hours or a day before you have to respond, if not weeks. Very few things in business are like, has to be responded. I mean, I know we make it like that with text messages and emails. We pretend that it has to be immediate, but truth is it doesn't.
I do think that we are very much, I sometimes feel that like stuff has got to be dealt with immediately, especially if you've got a lot on and your inbox is just, you know, moving up and up and up and up and up. But you have to train yourself. It is like a mind training thing to not try and deal with things straight away. That's something that I'm trying to do at the minute, is not react to things as and when they come.
Let them percolate a bit, you know. And several tricks there I find. I mean, it does help to get things out of the inbox and move them somewhere else, whether it's, you know, save this email for in case I need it later because it might be important, or I actually do need to act on it, so I'm going to move it into a to-do folder or whatever. Or maybe it's something I never need to do anything with and I can just get rid of it. Or maybe I can delegate it to someone else, you know.
I forward them to myself. I forward my
boomerang
them to myself.
Yes.
So that I don't open it, but I'll open it. But I've already read it.
Yeah, there's some software called, I think it's called Boomerang. I think that works with some things, and you can it's a little add-on to your email. I know it works with Gmail. I don't know what other ones it works with, but yeah, you can say, look, bring this back to my inbox in a day or 2 days or whatever. So you don't forget it, but it's going to not. Yeah. So there are many ways. Or, I'm a fan of the Getting Things Done by Dave Allen. He wrote a book called that. And, it doesn't really matter. You just need some system so you don't get overwhelmed. And I was going to say something else, but I've totally spaced out what it was.
Sorry, that was me. I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, I respect that some people listening love Slack and they like using it. I absolutely hate it because it's always trying to interrupt me. And unless you reconfigure it to stop it, it's always beeping at you that there's yet another thing. And the truth is, most of them are they're not that important. And if they were important, there could be a PHONE, a phone call. You could, if it's really important, why not pick up the phone and talk to someone so you've got the emotional connection, or do a Zoom call or whatever. So I like to run my business I use a thing called Basecamp, and it's all asynchronous, and nothing's an emergency. And if there is anything that is urgent, then we'll have a call, because there's probably more that needs to be discussed. And I think it's important you set up what I'm trying to get to. The basic point is here. You've got to decide, what kind of business do I want to have? And what are the systems and structures that support that kind of business? And if the business is one where you're proactive and your abundance mindset, and what did you say? Scarcity mode. So you're thriving mode instead of survival mode. What systems and structures do you need in place to achieve that? Maybe you need Natalie to help you breathe a bit.
If you want, I can forward your emails for you. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, no, I mean, the breath work, honestly, that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it's massively shifted a lot. And I don't think people fully understand it. I think they just think you're going to go and sit and do a bit of meditation. It's
deeper.
It's so profound. Yeah, there's some very profound experiences.
Yeah. I don't quite know what metaphor to put on it, but it's sort of like, imagine your office building has a lot of cracks in it and it's a bit wobbly. And one approach would be to slap a few coats of paint on the walls and cover up the cracks. And the other approach is to actually restructure the foundations. And the breath work is restructuring the foundations. It's not just drinking a few martinis to cover it up. It's very, I mean, I've experienced, I think it was called holotropic breath work when I did it.
Say that, holotropic.
And a lot of yoga involves breath work. It was a kind of yoga where you do a lot of breathing. I'm forgetting what they call it. Pranayama, that's what it's called. Where you breathe through one nostril and out through the other, or you breathe in cycles, that's another way, another technique. It's not the same. I do want to get into this conversation. We talked about how we can have the candidates happy, the employers happy, all the staff, the customers, and healthy. I also think the business itself has a soul and a spirit. And when the staff inside the business are reactive and survival mode, it makes the business not feel so good. I mean, I think it's analogous. You know how human bodies have all these trillions of cells in them? And I think business is the same. We've got all these staff in our businesses and we've got all these departments and they all have energy. And if we don't clean up the energy, the business itself can get a bit kind of grungy energy-wise and isn't as... I mean, I just experienced it. Some businesses just seem to have a sparkling, loving energy and full of abundance. And other businesses, it's like, ooh, have you ever gone, I don't forget what they call it. Is it the Driver's License Bureau? Or where do you get your driver's license?
DVLA,
yeah, in England.
Fun.
It's the DMV. But, because the people don't enjoy their jobs, typically, or if they do enjoy it, it's through a negative control, make people suffer kind of energy. But the whole organization has a heavy energy, is what I'm saying. And if we were going to totally remodel Great Britain or the United States, one of the things is that all the companies and all the organizations, all the hospitals, all the universities, all the military, they all need an energetic cleanup
Hugely.
I mean, what if we had a breathwork day where the whole of the country just spent the whole day breathing out all the crap, and we just visualized all our organizations having a clear mission and wonderful values and actually embodied that?
You would literally sort out so much stuff. I mean, a lot of these organizations are institutions. Like my sister's partner worked for the prison service, and she was amazing. She was an amazing prison officer. She actually ended up fighting in the Commonwealth Games, but she was actually bullied within the prison, and what the way that she was treated, because she wanted to go into the Commonwealth Games, she asked for some specific shifts, so she could train. But she was good. She was fighting for a country. First female boxer ever.
Wow.
And the way that institution, like the way it was run, and the toxicity of that culture was really, really bad. And she ended up having to leave. Because of that, just so that she could compete in the Commonwealth, But there's a lot of that. There's a lot of this kind of ingrained bullying, or
right.
If it's there from the beginning, or it's coming over time. If you come into that, unfortunately, like a lot of the time, you just have to leave. You just have to leave sometimes, don't you, for your own mental health?
For the individual, yes, it can be good to leave and reincarnate in another job somewhere else. And it is almost like reincarnating when you quit a job and go somewhere else, because you're reinventing yourself. But I just want to think of it a bit more positively. I don't think even, if you think of the most toxic businesses, whether they're corporate or public or whatever, I don't think any of them really they all started out with good intentions at heart 100 years ago or 200 years ago, whenever they started. But the problem is when you don't clean up this trauma in the individuals, and you don't clean up the trauma in the energy of the organization, they can get heavy. Yeah. And, even a prison, we don't typically think, I mean, you've got a sister who was in the prison system, so you probably have a bit more compassion for the prison system, but a lot of people don't think of prisons particularly lovingly. But even prisons have good, goals in mind to either remove from society those that might kill or hurt or rape other people, or to help reform the people who can be reformed and heal them, ideally. I'm talking about the ideal here, not what happens in practice. And to train them in new skills, right? That often happens in prisons. They, the prisoners who want to grow will spend time learning something new, or reading, or exercising, or whatever the thing is. So I'm saying, even in the organization that's the most jaded, the most toxic, there's a kernel of life in there. And it's just like with human beings, even with the flabby couch potato human who isn't healthy, there's a spark of life in there, that there was a little girl or a little boy who wanted to dance, wanted to laugh, wanted to, do all the great things, and it's almost extinguished, but it could come back.
If they want it to as well. There's got to be an element of wanting that as well, or seeing that it is possible.
Or a life crisis, right? In human beings, often they have a heart attack or cancer. And there's two ways to go with a health challenge, right? And I've seen this in friends. Some of them just roll over and die after a few months, right? Others are like, shit, I don't want to die now. I've got other things I want to do. And they totally change their diet and their exercise, and they get rid of toxic friends. And their cancer they call it spontaneous remission. What that means is, and it happens in 30-40% of cancers, right? And what spontaneous remission means, the doctors have no effing clue why they got better. Yeah. It was a spiritual miracle.
They decided. They decided in that moment, they decided.
Yeah, they shifted their reality. They cleaned up their toxic stuff, because I do believe that health challenges come initially. We have a spiritual illness, we're depressed or burned out or whatever. And then we don't eat so good or take drugs or whatever, or we don't work out, or we put up with a boss who's a dickwad. Sorry to bring that word back.
I love
it. After 5 or 10 years, it can exhibit in back pain or neck pain or cancer or whatever. And we have a choice. Do we shift our life? And the same thing is true for our businesses. A business starts off bright and shiny, but if you get too much bureaucracy or too many scars and toxic things and you don't clean them up, it can get icky, you know?
Well, it's the word, isn't it? Dis-ease creates disease. You know, it's
absolutely
that's the problem.
Right. That's what the word has in it, as you so cleverly said. It's a lack of ease. And the same thing in our jobs. It can have a lack of ease in the job or a lack of ease in the business. And you know, it's possible to feel that in our businesses or feel it in our jobs. What part of our business, you know, maybe the marketing department's really, you know, full of energy and joy and doing great things, but the accounting department's depressed and, you know, they tick other people off and they play politics with each other, you know, or vice versa. And the same thing with the job. You know, if you have a job, probably for everyone listening, there's at least one aspect of the job that you actually do like, whatever that is. You know, maybe it's particular task you do each month, or maybe it's the co-workers, or maybe you've got someone in the organization you look up to. You know, I'd hope that someone doing a job has something they like about it, right? So what if you could just heal all those aspects and make, either in that company you make the job wonderful, or you go somewhere else and have it wonderful. I'm
glad we got that one
you
sorted.
Into silence. Maybe that's a clue that we've been talking for quite a long time now, and we probably should have. We have, because we're having a good time. Yeah, with all these podcast things, I like to feel the energy of the interview. I think the interview itself is its own entity and has a, you know, a certain lifetime, and it's good to sense, okay, time to wrap up. So if we wanted to reach you online, what are good ways to find you online, Natalie?
So the longest website address in the world ever for my recruitment global software hiring company is Pangea, which is Pangaea, globalassociates.com. But if you're interested in breathwork, well, the breathwork as well, we're doing through Pangea because we're doing corporate breathwork. We've got a 6-week online course, and we do in-person workshops as well. And I want to do as many of them as possible because I think in-person is really good. But the 6-week course is fantastic as well. And then for the cacao, Breathe, Pray, Love Cacao. So breathepraylove.co.uk, but on Instagram and Facebook as Breathe, Pray, Love Cacao.
Wow.
It's quite a lot of work there.
Yeah, I will say. Well, I really appreciate you coming on our podcast and sharing your wonderful energy and beliefs, Natalie.
Thank you. It's lovely to have. It's lovely to have these kind of conversations in the business world, because obviously, I think, as we sort of said at the beginning, you kind of think, "Oh, can you have these conversations?" But now, for me, it's just like it's part of who I am, and it has to be shared. Like you can't hide these aspects of yourself, can you?
No, I think it's best to be, best to be ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because there's no one else in the world who's going to be you or me.
Oh, there's only one. There's only one. Everyone else is taken. Is that what's the song?
Something like that. So I invite everyone listening, do it just a little bit. Maybe it's a bit frightening to be a full on yourself, right? Today, but you could be a little bit more yourself somewhere, I'm sure. All right. Well, I look forward to talking with you another time. I'm going to end the show now.
Okay. Thank you.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. Create a fabulous and profitable day. What would it take?